evidence of our promissory obligations to each other. This mere publisher, dispossesses us of everything. We owe more than we can afford to service, and in default, of course, they collect it, although they own it, really. They are the real owners from the moment they issue the evidence of our promissory obligations to each other because of the obfuscation of the indebtedness. We owe them the principal and all the interest, and in so trying to fulfill all that, we multiply debt all the further. And sure, one guy or two guys or so many people in the beginning can pay off their debts, but not a short while into the system, and not a short while after that. Despite all the ability to sustain prosperity, which is far, far greater than we're realizing right now, far, far greater. Despite the fact we could do that, we're simply just deprived of it to such a degree that everything fails. So this is why the pretended rescue of the banking system will fail, and we discussed this some, but to review that. The thing is, we have to understand, we have to be more careful with our terminology than we are. This is where I use these different terms like circulatory inflation, meaning an increase in circulation per goods and services. It's the very thing that inflation used to mean when it was assumed only that it would cause price inflation. I use separate terms for each of them because it isn't a fact at all that circulatory inflation causes price inflation, which was the whole point of this story of a high school economics class. So we have a central bank, and we have what I call peripheral banks. The peripheral banks are the banks that we go to generally. And when we borrow money from a bank, we borrow it from a peripheral bank. And what happens, in effect, is the central bank simply publishes the evidence of the promissory obligation that we are creating, subject to the conditions and obfuscations that they impose upon it. And so this promissory obligation is issued to the real creditor, the builder of a $100,000 home with a 100-year lifespan, gets the $100,000 up front. They are the real creditor because they give up property in exchange for a mere promissory obligation. And then it's up to a system to maintain the integrity, to at least allow the maintenance of the integrity of that promissory obligation. Now, under mathematically perfected economy, and only under mathematically perfected economy is that possible, whereas under a central banking system, it's impossible. So when we say the banks will fail, what we're really talking about is the fact that when this obfuscation of the currency multiplies our artificial indebtedness to such a degree that we can no longer service our private debts, because what happens, the economy starts to fail somewhere. This sector that collapses first jeopardizes, marginalizes, adjacent sectors that are related to it. They can't get their supplies, they can't get their bills paid, etc. They fail to meet their bills. Next thing you know, they go into, closure as well, bankruptcy and all this. And so once the thing starts, the first sectors to go jeopardize other sectors, and the whole thing comes down like a house of cards. That to lose it or even jeopardize it, that idea is really unfathomable. Whereas these banks that are failing are just these peripheral banks, and all they are acting as is the middleman between us and we are the failure, and the central bank. And when this money that it quote-unquote borrowed from a central bank, which didn't even exist, it just published the evidence of our promissory obligation into circulation, and that is said to be borrowed by the peripheral bank, and then it's issued to us, and as we service debt equal to the principal plus all the interest on it. We're paying all that out of circulation, comprised at most of the principal, and so we have to reborrow what we're paying out of circulation to maintain a circulation so we can continue to service the debt until, by ever greater increments of periodic interest on an ever greater debt, our goose is cooked. And here we are, and those poor banks go down with us, and we need to save them, because if we keep them solvent, supposedly we can borrow more money. Well, it didn't happen. Why not? Because our creditworthiness is compromised. We are unfit to borrow more. So this is just a ploy to make you think that somebody's doing something about the things that need to be done, but those aren't the things that need to be done at all. We don't even need these banks. All they do is publish the evidence of our promissory obligations. What looks like a dollar bill or $1,000 bill or $100 bill is simply evidence that we went into a bank at one day and said, I'm going to pay that to somebody someday to pay off this debt. And so they're awarded full payment, just print it out on paper, enter it in electronic media, whichever. It costs practically nothing. So for, say, 10 cents, they issue $100,000 into circulation. And, we pay the fellow off who built the house with $100,000 and are required to pay whatever we were saying last week, $500,000 in interest and principal against this debt, all the while accumulating further debt that we have to continue servicing on forever until we accumulate such a debt that we fail. So these are the things that we discussed last week. Now, there's a tremendous amount of plagiarism in my work, and people, it's really undeniable. I was here first. I was here a long time before even anyone else started to follow me. And it really took off at the time of Jakerson, Jakeran. So I spoke about this, the main reason being not to speak about myself, but because we have to understand, are these people telling the truth? Did they give the story rightly? I gave an example where, we as children sat in a circle and whispered something in the person's ear to the left of us and went around and came back to us was nothing like what we said. Well, we explained a lot of these cases of plagiarism last week, not in order to prove that idea, but, of course, so that you understand what is going wrong. Why are people crying for this, that, and the other thing, And there's other things that are happening at the same time. I saw a program, it was, I don't know, a year or so ago, and in it, Jefferson was called, Thomas Jefferson was called a hypocrite. They actually use that word, and it's in a major television, channel. I can't even remember which one. I'm not much of a TV watcher, but it called Jefferson literally a hypocrite. For using the kind of money that Hamilton advocated to make the Louisiana Purchase. Well, you understand that the first Bank of the United States was created by Hamilton in Jefferson's absence. And Jefferson, like many of the things that he stood against, he wanted to attack slavery in his initial drafts of the Declaration of Independence. And then he had to sit mortified amongst his colleagues while they stripped these things from the Declaration of Independence so they could create a nation. So Jefferson endured many such things, but why is someone today calling Jefferson a hypocrite? Does it have anything to do with who owns the media? Because the people that can afford most own the media, and most need to own the media so that they can deceive us are the central banking system. You see, and this issue is over money. So why does this exist? And I pointed out so that, as you go through your daily lives, you notice these things because they mean something. They mean a lot. Jefferson was no more a hypocrite for using that kind of money than I am when I go to the grocery store and spend a Federal Reserve note, knowing full well it's not a dollar, not by definition, not by obligation, not by anything, not by a single principle. Is it not by law either? Is it a dollar? But I'm not a hypocrite for using them. I have no other choice until we all grow up and do something about this together. So in fact, this denial of representation that we have suffered all this time is 100 years of the Federal Reserve System, 35 years that I've been, presenting mathematically perfected economy to presidents and foreign governments and representatives, congressional representatives. This proves that what they're doing is on purpose. And you're going to have to get over that. That's an uncomfortable thing at first to fathom. But once you do, you can do something about it. If you never will, you think you're going to go call your, write your congressional representative or your senator, and he's going to stand up for something. And you're never even going to hear back from him if it's about monetary solution, a fact of one monetary solution. I can show you so many letters, you won't even believe it. All right. So anyway, this denial of representation proves they're doing this on purpose. So, in the end, then, at this time, I'm competing with all these plagiarists. The idea of solution is competing with plagiarists of the root thinking, which proved them from the beginning that there was one and one only integral solution for one, inflation, deflation, and maldisposition of the circulation. 2, systemic manipulation of the cost or value of money or property. And 3, inherent, irreversible, and therefore terminal multiplication of artificial indebtedness by interest. This is the very thing that Jesus Christ was put on the cross for exposing. So now, where do we have to go? We really need to mature as a people in our attitude and our perception in order that we unite. If we can't unite on this, we all have the same goal, and there is one means of achieving it. Now, why aren't we united? Well, there's, of course, many reasons, and we're going to give some examples of them. But the whole purpose of this will be to teach what we need to understand so that we can unite. If unity is not your purpose, turn off your radio, go somewhere else. You can't help yourself. So if I may, I would like to read something. I answered a question some time back. The question was, what is the responsibility of the federal government? Now, this was asked in an international context, and there were other questions like this answered, and I realized that the people answering them really didn't have an idea of the implications of the question or the answer. So I flipped this answer out there, and if I may, I'd just like to read it a minute. The question again was, what is the responsibility of the federal government? So my answer was, assuming you mean the present federal government of the United States of America, the principal fundamental responsibility of the federal government is to represent the people. Poor students of the